Hello, Lightworker Superstars. It's Shauna L. Francis, and today is February 10th, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. We are channeling the late Queen Elizabeth. This is episode 21. 21. Amazing. If you're new to my channel, new to these messages, I highly recommend that you go back, take a look at some of the daily ascension updates that I did. I did those for over 100 days straight. And then we got into the Reptilian disclosure stuff with the Galactic Federation of Light. Really good information, a lot of background. I think I'm almost up to 300 videos now, and it's all free on this channel. So have a look, get caught up, maybe start at least at the beginning of the Queen's channelings and pick it up from there. We are naming names, and Melchizedek said that we would be. This is a very famous person, a very well-known name. I'm not sure exactly how I will title this video. I might give it away just right off the bat, or I might make you wait in suspense. This was another 3+ hours with the Queen today. I started around 4, and here it is already 11:30 p.m. And I'm just now getting to making this video. So tomorrow I'm going to start much earlier. And then Sunday, I'm taking the day off, and I've cleared this with Melchizedek already. So I get the day off on Sunday. All right. So we had 2,100 words. So this is a lot of words exchanged with Queen Elizabeth today. A lot to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and get into this. Thanks everybody for being here and for all your beautiful comments, all your love, support. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. Thanks for supporting each other. We're doing amazing, beautiful work, team. You guys are rocking this. All right. I said, how are you today, Elizabeth? And she said, I'm doing well, thank you. Feeling better, actually. Now that I've gotten some of this, quote unquote, off of my chest. I'm doing well, Shauna. How are you? And I said, I'm feeling really good, feeling wonderful, so much love. I was just feeling so good today. Really grounded, anchored in love and light, feeling, invincible, like we've got this. So it was a really good day today. I said, I'm elated. I said, honestly, Queen Elizabeth, I'm elated for what we're doing. And she said, oh, thank you, Shauna. That is wonderful to hear. She said, I am too, really, even though it's extremely difficult to form the words, to try to convey such deep, deep emotions and feelings around all of this. It has been a beautiful journey up to this point, and I am also grateful, Shauna, for you and our extended team here supporting us both. I said, wonderful, I'm ready to go whenever you are. By the way, I did ask Melchizedek tonight about these, taking 3.5 hours, and they said it's Elizabeth and her process. It's not me, it's not interference, it's not any of that stuff. So just thought I'd mention that. It's just part of the process here that we're going through. She said, more back to the beginning stories for you and the audience. I said, wonderful. She said, I was just a little girl. I remember holding my father's hand. I was wearing a wool coat, and I had brand new shoes and a bow in my hair, and I was just on top of the world. My little sister Margaret, I really adored my sister. We had great fun when we were youngsters. I always felt very loved and very nurtured and very supported. Of course, things changed when Dad became the king. I saw him much less often, and I also noticed that he was more and more grumpy and distant the longer he served in that role. Big pause here. One evening, she said, I remember that we all went out for a stroll. I believe it was a Sunday. I loved Sundays. They were so relaxing. We girls got a lot of attention from Dad on Sundays. I remember kicking rocks and grabbing my sister's hand and running up ahead of the group, then stopping and running back, giggling and laughing. I remember that my father just stopped suddenly. And he got a concerned look on his face, and he seemed to be lost in thought, as though he wasn't even aware of his surroundings or any of us. Sounds like it was probably a hive-mind moment. My sidebar. She said here, after a couple of moments passed, he said, "Come on, girls, we need to get back," and he turned around and started to return home at a fairly brisk pace. Margaret and I ran up ahead of him, doing some skipping and jumping, hopping. My father made good time as he returned, only looking at the ground with his brow furrowed. Upon our return, he asked the support staff who were waiting for us to take us girls up to the nursery. She said here, "I remember that there was one black staff member, a female, who mainly worked in the kitchen. I never did speak with her, but in those days, it was such a sight to see a person of color in those circles. I recall the other staff referring to her as Mimi. That name always stuck with me. I often wondered about her and how it came to pass that she would be working for our family." So this was the only thing that was mentioned about Mimi. I found it really interesting that she would interject this. Maybe this will become important later in our channeling. She continued here, all the staff were required to attend Mass on Sundays. The staff didn't get much of a break from what I could tell, but on Sundays, things felt lighter, more jovial, not so serious. I loved Sundays because of that. Really big pause here, my energy going much, much deeper. She said, life back then was pretty simple from my perspective. I remember that my dad had disappeared for quite a while that evening after we hurried back to the house. Later, when I saw him, he was emerging from his office and he was ashen in color. I was quite taken aback by his appearance and his demeanor. I thought maybe somebody had died. I remember that my mother also seemed on edge. I spied on them both, looking through a crack in the door, listening intently with my ear to the door, and then also looking, trying to understand what was the matter. My father and my mother spoke at length. I couldn't really hear what was being said, only that they seemed to be very concerned. After supper, my mom and dad, I believe she said mom, I'm going to go with it. After supper, my mom and dad asked to speak with me alone, having my sister escorted out of the room. The three of us sat together on formal, overstuffed couches, furniture that we barely used. My father put his hands on his knees and he looked right at me. And he said, "Elizabeth, we have some very important news to share with you. I am to be king, my darling daughter," he said. And then I said, "What do you mean? What happened to Uncle?" And he said, "Nothing. He's fine, just that he's decided that he does not want to be king any longer. And since I'm next in line for the crown," he said, "that would mean that I will become the king, dear daughter." And then he said here, "What that means is that someday after I'm gone, you will be queen." She said, "Well, I just couldn't believe my ears. I thought, how can this be true? I must be dreaming." I was around 10 years old at the time. My childlike brain had such a hard time understanding how this could have happened so quickly. I was at once worried for my father to take on such a huge responsibility. I hadn't quite thought yet how this might impact me. In any case, I thought my dad would live forever and it would be a very, very long time before I would have to worry about any of this. Within a matter of a few short minutes, however, I became so excited. We'll be moving to the palace. We will have jewels and horses and dogs, lots and lots of money, beautiful clothes. I'll have many friends. This seemed like such a grand adventure. Wow, my dad the king. It was so hard to believe. She continued here. My imagination was running wild. I was grinning ear to ear. I said, Mummy, does this mean you'll be queen? She said, yes, it does. I jumped up and started clapping. I realized that I was acting foolish, so I sat back down and I got quiet again. After all, this was very serious business. I needed to start acting like a lady, a royal lady, a princess. I said to them, when can we tell Margaret? And my father said, why don't you go ahead and fetch her now, and we'll tell her. And I did just that. I grabbed her by the hand and brought her into the room with the big formal couches and proceeded to tell her the whole story. Days and weeks and months passed after that moment, very much in a blur. Soon my dad was officially crowned the king. My mom had become the queen, and we were the new royal family. We were at the center of politics for most of Western Europe. She said here, I watched my father intently as he went about his reign. I very much idolized my father. I thought he could do no wrong, but little did I know that both my mother and father were harboring some very deep and dark secrets. Another big pause here. My father seemed to me to be a very brave man, stoic, shoulders back, head held high. Not much seemed to scare him. Courageous, that might have been the word that I would have used to describe my father. My mom doted on my dad. They were a strong match. I never saw them argue or fight, though they did seem to be living separate lives after my father got deep into his reign as king. Winston Churchill, the prime minister at the time, had a close relationship with my father. This made for good politics and a strong monarchy, but my father and Winston Churchill had much more in common than just being political leaders. You could probably see where this is going. Winston Churchill was part of the negative reptilian bloodline, such as my father. Winston Churchill and his descendants are part of the negative reptilian regime. She said here, Shauna, it breaks my heart to say this, but this lineage has also done formidable damage in terms of the suppression of humanity, enslavement, pedophilia, human sacrifice, money laundering, many crimes, breaking of human laws as well as universal laws. They also ingest ADR, and many of them have participated in the pedophilia blood rituals described previously. Oh boy. I said, it's heartbreaking, Elizabeth. Please continue whenever you're ready. There's a big pause there. And Elizabeth said, thank you, Shauna. Proof of this can and will be found, and it will be heartbreaking to many people. I said, wow, yes, I can imagine. And she said, back to my father. He served in our armed forces. He did many good things while he was king. At least you can see that he tried, even if much of it was at the direction and discretion of the hive-mind leadership. My understanding is that there was not extensive scheming, plotting, and planning that happened between my father and Winston Churchill, but they certainly would have known about each other's deep, dark secret that they shared, and there would be a special bond because of it. And there was a pause there, and I asked a question. I said, was there anything sinister going on in terms of King Edward, who abdicated the throne to your dad? Was that planned? Or was that going to serve the negative reptilian regime in some way? She said, Shauna, I wouldn't call it sinister, but it was definitely advantageous for the negative reptilian regime, for my father and for me to be serving in the capacities that we did. Modern rulers for modern times, she said, and the hive-mind connection was strong with us. I said, thank you, Elizabeth, for answering that. I said, is there anything else you want to talk about today? By this time, we were a good 3 hours into this. She said, Shauna, it's difficult for me to talk about my father and his ties to the negative reptilian regime. I really loved my dad. He was a huge influence in my life. At least that is how I regarded him, even though in truth we know there were bigger influences at play. Like me, she said, he had a strong affinity for his children, and like me, this helped him hang on to the best parts of being human. Winston Churchill also displayed some positive qualities, she said. He was well respected by many of his peers. The public-facing aspects of this negative reptilian regime are carefully cultivated as to not be discovered for who and what they really are. For every public-facing negative reptilian human, there are many of the same out of the public eye, doing much of the heavy lifting, serving the regime. This was also the case with my mother and father. Shauna, one last thing to note is that I was horrified when my dad died so unexpectedly. I really did think he'd live forever. And there was a pause there, and I said, Elizabeth, may I ask another question? She said, certainly. I said, did the negative reptilians have something to do with terminating your dad's life? And she said, not that I'm aware, Shauna. I said, okay, thank you. She said, here, Shauna, the gravest, most inhumane acts are the ones relating to the blood sport. While the negative reptilians have been so very careful for such a very long time to hide this insane practice, they have slipped up. There is evidence of this, and what can be found will be found, and it will help to expose the most egregious, horrifying acts being committed on the planet today. I said, I hope so, Elizabeth, and I hope it happens quickly. Thank you so much. I said, please continue whenever you're ready. And she said, Shauna, this is complete for me today. And I said, okay, thank you, Queen Elizabeth. All right, so I really don't know much about her dad. I don't know really anything about Winston Churchill. But of course, after this, I'm paranoid about the facts being right, and is all of this lining up? And everything does seem to line up. Winston Churchill served in politics from like 1900 to 1965, forever, at various roles. And he, if you do a little bit of research, there's a lot that is very, very sinister and questionable about his decisions and what he did around the world. So you guys, I'll leave that up to you to do that research. Queen Elizabeth's dad, King George VI, I think his reign was only about 20 years, and it was said that he and Winston Churchill had a close relationship, or at least friendly. But I also did read that Queen Elizabeth had a very friendly relationship with Winston Churchill. Oh boy. Proof coming out. So I completely trust that there are people in place right now doing the work to bring this proof to light. So I am not taking that on. I am simply going to be this messenger for Queen Elizabeth and anybody else on our team who's coming through, and allow all of that to take place. I'm not really, I'm not going around telling my friends and family a whole lot about what's going on here with the negative reptilians. I mentioned just enough so they know what's going on in my world and generally the intensity of the information, but I'm not doing, I'm definitely not trying to convince. I'm just kind of keeping these guys informed. And I've got a lot of support and a lot of love. So it's been really, really nice. Definitely feeling, like I said, more grounded in this information, feeling more connected to Queen Elizabeth, and more confident to a degree in the channeling. When names like Winston Churchill and his descendants, this is a big, bold statement. I am just trusting that what's coming through is correct and accurate. And several times tonight as I'm prepping for this video, I'm asking Melchizedek, please, did I get this right? And they said, yes, Shauna, you've got this right. I'm like, all right. Okay, team. So there's that for today. Thanks everybody again for being here. I love you guys so much. Thanks for everything that you're doing to support me, to support the Queen, and to support each other. And I do expect I'll see you tomorrow, but not on Sunday. All right, team. Until then. Mwah.